Welcome to Happy Talks with Dr. Alice and Donovan. Dr. Alice Fong is a holistic naturopathic doctor and founder of Amor de Soi Wellness. And Donovan Jensen is a software engineer and founder of HowToHappy.com. Together, they're out to cause more happiness in the world.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Happy Talks. My name is Dr. Alice, and this is my awesome co-host, Donovan. And today we are talking about sleep quality and sleep deprivation. I think we've both been there. A lot of us have. So, Donovan, what's your initial thoughts regarding this topic?
Yeah, so the first thing that comes to mind is just how important sleep is, and that it's not necessarily, and I feel like, for the most part, everybody knows that too. Everybody
Right.
knows, like, oh, I should be sleeping roughly 7 to 8 hours a night, and I should be high quality sleep. And I feel like it doesn't get prioritized in the same way that, like, people are like, I need to exercise and I need to eat better. And I like, there's this bucket of things that it just seems like everybody knows that they need to do good things in that category, and they tend not to. So for sleep specifically, I think it'll be one of those things. Maybe we can like touch on it at some point. Why maybe we think like people aren't able to execute on that last piece. But for me, one of the things that really is prevalent is that, like, when I don't sleep well, a number of negative, unhappy things happen for me. So I've personally tried to prioritize it a bit more, but I'd be curious what your thoughts are before I ramble too much.
Yeah, no, I agree that it's such a big priority for me now. And it has been growing pains and discovering how important it is, because I definitely don't feel like I function as well when I don't get enough sleep. And I cannot, well, I mean, I can't say I can't, but I prefer not to do what I did in college, where I would just be up till like 3 or 5 in the morning writing a paper or hanging out with friends, just like no big deal. Now I'm a little more regimented, or I'm like, I attempt to go to bed at 10 is my goal. And when I do, I'm like excited. That's maybe the adult in me being excited when I can go to bed at 10. That doesn't always happen. I'm thankful that I'm mostly a pretty good sleeper. I actually just scored a 90 on my Fitbit sleep score last night. So, which is usually I'm in the 80s, but once in a while I get a 90s. And if it's lacking in sleep, like if I get less than 7 hours, typically my score goes down. So I know, like, I need typically at least 7 hours to feel decent. But on the flip side, recently I traveled to Italy, and that really fucked up my sleep in a lot of different ways. And yeah, I had to like spend a lot of time in an airport, and I was sleep deprived, and it took like 2 days to get there. And there was a canceled flight. So it just really, really messed my sleep up. And so I was like, well, maybe this is good. Maybe I'll just like conk out once I get there. Although I had to stay awake. I got like, it was like we left on a Wednesday night and we got there a Friday morning, but it's like you have to account for the time difference. I didn't get a whole lot of sleep on the plane, maybe a little bit, and it's never quality sleep on a plane. But I was actually able to adjust to European time fairly easily, because I think I was just so exhausted, even though 9 p.m. there is like 1 p.m. or no, 12 p.m. here on the West Coast. So, moral of the story, I don't know where I'm going with that. I need good sleep. That's what matters.
Do you feel that there was like a point or something that happened that changed for you to start prioritizing sleep? Because I could speak about that for a minute afterwards, but I feel like it's not always something that I was really thinking about in a useful way.
Yeah, no, I think it was just I know I shared this story before. It was like my first year of med school, where I would just study till like the hours of the night, and it wasn't really helping me get good grades. I was like, hey, studying when your brain is not very functional, and it's like pointless. It's actually more productive to get sleep. I think it was that first year of med school. So that was like 12 or 14 years ago. No, 14 years. Oh my God, that's 14 years ago. Man, that's a teenager. 14 years ago is when I really started to like put 2 and 2 together, and that, oh, if I sleep well, I perform better. Maybe I should make this a priority. And so that was the start of it. But I can't say that my sleep was always consistent. I always felt like I was a night owl in a way. But then I read the book Miracle Morning or Morning Miracle by Hal Elrod. He's talking about, my friend recommended it, and I was like, sure, I'm into personal development books, not knowing that it was about getting up early. I should have like getting up early and consistently. And I did that book maybe like 4 years ago. And I think that's where it became even a higher priority. Like I knew I needed sleep, but it was more about like getting enough sleep, like 7, but the timing of it wasn't like too big of a deal to me. But now after like that book, maybe 4 years ago, like, no, I want to go to bed early. I like getting up early and like being more productive if I can. So mornings aren't like, it depends on how early in the morning, but I'm like, if I'm consistent with my routine, mornings aren't like the death of me anymore, which is kind of nice. Yes.
Yeah, that's what I've always heard is the most important part is getting like a consistency in your routine,
Mhm.
regardless of the specific, if it's like 5 a.m. or 11 a.m., as long as it's like you have the schedule and it's very consistent, and then
Mhm.
you have sort of the start of your day set up in a way that you build positive momentum.
Yeah.
Because I think one of the things that I've heard a lot of, and I don't necessarily subscribe to, is this idea of like, oh, you should get up as early as you possibly can and get a bunch of stuff done. And there's some ideas. I mean, I'm not an expert in this. Is not one of the things that I'm super well versed in, but there's some ideas around like, I think they're called chronotypes of just like
Mhm.
when is ideal for you to go to sleep and wake up.
Yeah.
And that shifts by a number of hours, right? Like, so for some
Right.
people, 11 p.m. to 7 or whatever else. I don't know the actual specifics,
Mhm.
but figuring out that piece can really help a lot. I know for me, when I shifted my bedtime actually earlier and started getting up earlier, I started feeling a lot better,
Mhm.
even though the amount of sleep was the same, even when the schedule was consistent, right? I had a consistent like later schedule, but it wasn't correct for me for just the time that I felt the most rested. But I
Mhm.
know there's other people that I've run into that, they have a consistent schedule that's shifted a little bit later that works really well for them, as long as, they get the right amount of sleep. So I guess
Right.
the point I'm trying to get across is like, over time, I realized that it's not just this simple like, oh, get 7 or 8 hours of sleep, which is what I originally thought, or like that was my baseline idea.
Mhm.
And there's a little bit more nuance, I found, at least, to getting quality sleep.
Yeah, definitely. It makes a difference. I recognize though that technically, like from the European trip, I realized that my body can still handle like going a day without sleep, which I don't prefer to do, but it was impressive that I managed and actually felt like okay. And I was like, oh, that's surprising to me. Um, but I know at times like almost not getting any sleep versus like getting like 3 hours of sleep was like a different, like getting only like a super short period, then I'm really cranky and groggy. But if I'm just powering through, I feel okay. It's a weird a weird thing. I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah. In a related note, it's not exactly what you're talking about, but I feel like I also learned a lot when I realized that the quality of your sleep over a certain period makes a big difference. By that I mean,
Mhm.
like, if you miss one day, cool, you could, like, I can
Yeah,
probably
you
make it.
can
It's
bounce
fine,
back.
especially if I've been sleeping well before and I start sleeping well again.
Right.
But it's sort of this like, oh, I've only been sleeping 6 hours for 2 weeks straight. Like, the sleep debt kind
Mhm.
of builds up to the
Right.
point where
Yeah.
it becomes a lot more of a problem. So
Mhm.
that's another thing, is that I used to sort of like skip out a little bit of sleep for very long periods of time and then have like a big crash and
Mm-hmm.
realizing that was not a good fit or useful. But I just figured, like, oh, I almost got enough sleep, and I almost got enough sleep, and it's like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, I got 90% every day, so like should be fine.
Right.
But when I switch my thinking around to like I'm missing 10% every day, and every day I have to
Yeah.
pay, like I'm adding to the debt that I eventually have to pay back. That helped me get my head on a little more straight about like prioritizing sleep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with you. It's like, I mean, I could survive off 6 hours of sleep, but I know I'll just be tired, like, and dragging like the whole week long if I do that. And I mean, I used to do things like that, and then I would just, you know, sleep. I can remember when I used to sleep until noon and it was totally like normal and fine. And now I can't do that. And part of me is a little disappointed in myself that I can't do that anymore. I don't know if it's like a teenage thing, but I did it in my 20s too. Yeah, it's interesting
Yeah.
how her body's
Yeah, no,
changed.
well, for me in my trajectory, I think it's because my schedule is a lot more regimented now, right? And
Yeah.
so when I was younger, and there is also some, again, I'm not super expert on these things, but there is some idea of like your times are later as a teenager and then shift
Mhm.
back for most people into those earlier times as you turn into a full-fledged adult. But I also, my schedule was way more flexible. Now
Yeah.
most days I need to be up by 7
Mhm.
at the latest.
Mm.
So my body is just like so in tune with waking up at 7 that almost regardless of the time I go to sleep, I wake up around 7 or 7:30.
Mhm.
And I think that's part of it is just like I don't have as much flexibility for me. I don't have as much flexibility as I used to. Like the patterns are so much more
Yeah.
cemented than, in college or high school. It was kind of like a lot more just random and fluid. And then there were big gaps of time, like in the summer or whatever, that it would be like,
Mhm.
I'm just sleeping until noon because I can.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's kind of around the time I get up is like between 7 and 7:30. And I part of it's because, my workouts at 8:30, I have a class, and then I have to get up and walk the dogs and meditate and do my morning routine. So it's usually around 7, and it's not too bad most of the time, but I notice when I got back from Europe though, because of the time difference, I was getting up at like 6 and it was awesome. And I was like, "Oh, maybe I can sustain this." And I was going to bed at like 9, and I was like, "This is awesome." But I feel like there's so many things that just happen beyond 9 p.m. It's hard to go to bed at 9. But I know some people, maybe when I have kids, or some people are like bed by 8 or 9, and I'm like, that's awesome. But if my teenage self was like, going to bed at 8 or 9, are you a grandma? Like, kind of is the thing. So my thinking has really shifted around this a lot.
Yeah, I think it's really just a matter of what is actually effective for you. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, I also, for a period, I kind of had like idealized, like, oh, I'm going to be going to bed early and getting up super early and like
Hmm.
doing all this stuff. And I did do that for a long time. Like, I
Yeah.
forced myself to do it. Like, when I was doing my programming boot camp, I would get up at like maybe even 4. Might have
Hmm.
been 4 to like
Hmm.
work out before I went and did like the coding stuff all day.
Yeah.
But I realized just because like I can set that structure doesn't mean that I should, because
Right.
in one sense I felt like very gratified that like, oh, look at me, like I can do this, and this is like the correct thing. But in another sense, like that was completely arbitrary, right? It was just like completely made up, like, oh,
Right.
I'm awesome because I get up early and get stuff done. When in
Yeah.
reality, it wasn't serving me because I was racking up a bunch of sleep debt during that time
Hmm.
because I wasn't going to bed super, super early to accommodate for getting up super early. And then
Yeah.
I didn't feel 100% for
Hmm.
that period. I felt like 80% or whatever. Like one of the things that I've realized just in that same vein is when you're operating at almost 100% or
Hmm.
almost good or almost optimal,
Yeah.
it feels good enough that if you do it long enough, it can feel kind of like, oh, this is just like how I operate. This is normal.
Right.
Um, and I played in that space for a long time where I was just like, oh, like this is just how I feel. And it's crazy how different it is now that my patterns and habits and knowledge is a little bit tighter and
Mhm.
my sleep quality is a little bit better, how much more of a person I am. Like I'm
Yeah,
so
right.
much more balanced and emotionally and able to just
Oh,
like
totally.
finish more stuff and just like do more things. But because it was not quite like, oh, I'm dead exhausted, but
Mhm.
a little bit below, like, oh, I feel super refreshed.
Mhm.
I just didn't take it that seriously until it became um until I learned a little bit more and it became more obvious like what the actual capacity I had was.
Mhm. Yeah, I can really relate to that a lot. I'm curious though, what kinds of things did you we've talked a lot about routines and that has helped both of us in kind of establishing better quality of sleep. What were some things that you incorporated into your routine to have better quality?
Okay, this one is really stupid, but the first thing
Yeah.
that came to mind was I used to have a like a bedtime and I would just always miss it every single time.
I've done
And
that.
I changed it to I have like a period of time that I'm going to bed. So
Mhm.
like instead of like, oh, it's I don't know, 11, I'm supposed to be in bed. It'd be like I go to bed at 10:30 and I need to
Mhm.
be in bed by 11. Super dumb small tweak, but for me that made such a big difference because then like doesn't really take me 30 minutes to get ready for bed, but
Right.
then I could
Yeah.
kinda like, "Oh, like I'm getting there, I'm going," and, like,
Right.
it gave me a period of time instead of sort of like a deadline for, like, this
Right.
needs to be done.
Yeah.
That's one thing that surprisingly helped a lot.
Mm.
Another thing is I'm not super perfect at this, but, keeping my schedule on the weekends helped a lot
Mhm.
instead of, where it was like add up sleep debt, pay it off on the weekend,
Yeah.
add it back up.
Right.
That really messed with the quality. Things that improve the quality that I wasn't noticing as much until I really cut it out was like drinking alcohol. Like
Mm. Mhm.
now that I don't drink very often at all, I notice like a significant difference in sleep from even like one drink.
Mm.
And when I was doing that more consistently, like it wasn't noticeable unless it was a lot. So
Yeah.
that's been kind of interesting. Um, Same with like caffeine,
Mhm.
making sure that I cut that by noon is like the last time. 10
Mhm.
is the ideal time. Um, a couple other things like around the environment, just like blocking out noise or like I had earplugs for a bit. I still use them occasionally depending on the
Mhm.
situation.
Yeah.
So some of the stuff that's like very standard, right? Just
Right.
like sleep mask, some earplugs.
Oh,
Um, I think that's
okay.
most of the things.
Yeah.
What about for you?
Yeah, I mean, I've done some of the things that you've done, like the things that I've acquired over the years and improving my sleep quality is get an awesome mattress. It's important. Invest in that. I got blackout blinds. I like it dark. I like it cold. That's something that helps me sleep. Like the summer is really hot here, so we had to turn on the AC at night, which yeah, sometimes it gets too cold, but I like it cold. I notice that my sleep quality is better if it's colder. Like I actually like 80-90% of the time I have to get up to use the bathroom in the middle of the night. I think this is just something that just came with age, unfortunately. But last night when I got my 90, I didn't. And I always think that's like a better night's sleep when I can just sleep through the night. And I think it's more likely to happen if it's colder. So that's something I pay attention to is the temperature. Other things I like to do, I kind of got into the routine of playing sleep music to kind of just like let my brain unwind and kind of get ready for relaxation. And it kind of just like that's kind of like my sleep routine. And I kind of have a similar thing as you is like, have a window maybe between like 10 and 10:30 is when I start to like prepare for sleep or even a little bit earlier, but I'll start the the music, and it usually doesn't take me long. What else I do? I think, outside of the sleep routine, I have other routines like my morning meditation and my my workout in the morning, I think helps that. I also cut out caffeine. I only do decaf at this point. And alcohol, even though alcohol makes me, I don't drink a lot either. But I noticed that like I will get I can't like get drunk, I feel like, anymore. I'm not 20 anymore because I get so tired from it. Like after 2, I just want to go to sleep. But then the quality isn't so bad. I'm waking up so much, partly to go to the bathroom, and then partly just kind of it's not like as deep, it feels like. So it'll help me fall asleep faster, but the quality through the night isn't the best, is what I've experienced. Yeah, so those are some of the things that I've done.
Yeah, that reminded me of one that has actually made a huge difference for me, which is I stopped doing other stuff in my bedroom. Like I used to,
Mhm.
I don't know, get on my laptop and shop or whatever I do on my laptop. I have no idea. But I stopped doing that in my bedroom. Like I'll
Mhm.
do it on the couch if I want to be
Yeah.
lazy and just like relax, but that's in the living room. And I had heard in the past, like, oh, you have to separate these things out
Mhm.
and it will help you fall asleep faster. And I didn't really believe it until I actually did it very, very consistently. Like it didn't work
Mhm.
for me until it was really consistent. So like
Right.
even stuff like I know a lot of people will just lay in bed and browse on their phone. Like
Yeah.
I
So
don't
bad.
do that.
Yeah.
Like if I
I
want to
can't do
do
that.
that, I'll get up and go to the couch and
Right.
then just like I do all the same lazy stuff. Like I didn't get more ambitious. I don't
Right.
like not lounge, but really limiting the amount of stuff that happens in the bedroom has made
Mhm.
it much faster for me to fall asleep. Like
Yeah.
when I go in there, I feel like I'm just conditioned now to like, oh, I'm gonna go to sleep. Does it work 100% of the time? No. Like sometimes I
Mhm.
still have trouble sleeping, but in general, I'm able to fall asleep much faster and easier than I have in the past because it's just so much
Mhm.
clearer what's going on when I start getting ready for bed.
Right. Yeah. It's like creating the sacred space for sleep, which I think is important and valuable. I'm not consistent with that, but I'm a pretty good sleeper, so I think I can get away with it. I am curious though, because I know this is a problem for a lot of engineers, because I've worked with a lot of engineers helping them with their stress and anxiety. And the reoccurring problem that I heard was that, and I'm guilty of experiencing this too, not as frequently, but once in a while, like when I'm dealing with a lot of stress, it's like your brain is like running, 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 going, 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 and you just can't shut it off to sleep because you're just like overthinking. What have you experienced that for one, and what have you done if that happens?
Yeah, so I have experienced that, but the only time that it's been strong enough is when I like to be a problem is when
Mhm.
my work life balance has been completely out of whack. And that
Mhm.
means like not like a long day or a long week, but like long months
Oh,
where
okay.
basically like I wasn't doing anything to disconnect from work ever, pretty
Mhm.
much.
Yeah.
So when I was in that mode, which was not healthy for a number of reasons,
Mhm.
then that chatter at the end of the night was really strong.
Mhm.
But nowadays, when my thing like my work life is a little bit more balanced,
Yeah.
um, the thing that prevents that is just not doing or thinking about work like probably up to an hour before bed, right? Like
Mhm.
if I'm going to bed at 10, then at 9, like this stuff goes off, closed,
Yeah.
do something else. Like,
Mhm.
and that for me is enough of a gap to sort of let my brain unwind and not keep ruminating into the night.
Yeah.
It still happens from time to time, but just sort of and part of this has been learned over the course of the last couple of years, but just like allowing myself to disconnect too. And
Yeah.
that's easier said than done. I don't know if I
Totally.
have like a specific way of doing that, but um at a high level it's just been doing something else for that last hour. Like
Mm.
and when it was a problem, I would work right up until I would try to go to bed. Like I would,
Oh,
it'd
yeah.
be work the whole day, maybe take an hour or two for dinner, and then come
Mhm.
back and work until bed. So now,
Right.
if I'm going to do something like that, I'll take I mean, I'll take that break for dinner or whatever and then come back to work, but then not go straight into bed. Like no matter what, that extra hour comes at the end now.
Yeah. No, I think that's really big, and that's something I've discovered for myself. I usually try to stop working by 7 typically, but I know one of the downsides of being a business owner, it's like you're working off the clock. There's no clock even. Like you're working and you're not getting paid for a certain hour. So sometimes you get caught up in certain business ideas or projects, and I get totally consumed by it, and then that's the thing that keeps me up. I'm not necessarily worrying about anything in particular. I'm just kind of like planning too much. I can't like turn off my brain from planning and being like, what's the next step going to be and how is this going to look and what's like, yeah. And so that has kept me up at times where I'm just kind of like in a groove and I don't want to stop myself when I'm in flow state, but at the same time I value my sleep, so it's just this kind of internal struggle in a way.
That's actually a really good and important distinction, I think, which is
Mhm.
the difference between like stress rumination before going to
Right.
bed and like, I don't know if excitement is a word that lands for you, but
Sometimes
it
it's
kind of
excitement.
lands for me
Yeah.
because they're actually two very different things. So like stress from work stuff is what I said before, but if I
Yeah.
have something in my head that I want to work
Right.
on and
Mhm.
it's like just running around,
Right.
I will just skip my bedtime and do something to like
Yeah.
get that out of my system. But the thing that's nice about that is it's not like the stress version, because the
True.
stress version just like builds up day after day after
Yeah.
day and causes a bunch of problems.
Right.
The excitement version, which I think I've had for like up to a week, where I'm just like working these long hours on something that I just like really want to get done,
Yeah.
and I'm not stressed about it at all.
Yeah.
I'm okay sort of like paying that
Mhm.
sleep debt out.
Mhm. Yeah.
Right? Well, like, that's okay because it's never been like 3 months of just like, "Yes, I'm so excited to work on this." Like, "Here we go, I'm gonna knock it out." But
Yeah, I
that's
get that.
not that that's a general suggestion, that's just how I, like, personally have weighed it out, is like, if
Mhm.
I have something going on in my head that I'm excited or amped up about enough,
Yeah.
or like you were saying, like, plans, I'll
Yeah.
at least just get up to, like, write everything out and then
Right.
just, like, cool, brain dump, and that's usually enough for me, or
Mhm.
doing the work to
Mhm.
like have enough of a release to like, okay, I'm gonna go to bed.
Yeah. Yeah, it is definitely more gratifying, but I think you got to ride the wave while you can because it's not going to last forever in a way,
No.
and I enjoy the wave sometimes, but yeah, sometimes you got to dial it back. Anyways, is there, before we wrap up today, was there anything else that you felt like was important to cover?
The only thing I want to highlight and
Mhm.
hammer home, only because it's been more noticeable to me, is
Yeah.
just like paying attention to the types of things that you consume and that
Oh,
impact on your sleep,
important.
especially if it's regular,
Mhm.
because sometimes some of these patterns and habits are just so common, where it's like, I used to drink like quite a bit more, and I used to have a
Mhm.
couple drinks every night, and then just be like,
Yeah.
yeah, this is regular. And now that I don't do that, I'm
Mhm.
like, oh my god, my sleep was so much worse, and
Yeah.
my quality of life wasn't like so much worse, but
Yeah.
noticeably different, right? Like
Mhm.
noticeably easier to manage certain things or like take on certain tasks or whatever
Mhm.
else. But I wasn't waking up like, oh, I'm so hungover like every day. I
Yeah.
mean, I wasn't even noticing it.
Yeah.
So just paying attention to any of those types of
Mhm.
things, like
Mhm.
maybe your room is bright at night, or like there's
Yeah.
noise, or any of those kinds of things, because your quality of sleep is not just the amount of time that you're sleeping.
Right.
And it can be really easy to miss some of the potential optimizations.
Mhm. Oh yeah, I do. I totally forgot to mention that. I noticed when I am eating cleaner, sleep quality's much, much better. Like sugar, or that's why I don't actually do caffeine much anymore, mainly because it doesn't actually give me energy. So I'm like, what's the point? But it does mess my sleep up. So I'm like, well, that's not good. So it's like I shouldn't just like, it was not that hard for me to give up caffeine. And so, but I like the taste of coffee. So, and I'm not snobby enough in coffee to not drink decaf. So I enjoy the decaf. Yes.
Yeah, that's another a good point. It's just like for many of the things, there's also like alternatives or options or things you can do to like wean yourself off. Because a lot of those sorts of habits, I mean, for you, it didn't sound like that was a problem at all. But
No.
for me, for example, at some point, I need to bring my caffeine intake down. I don't need to. I would like to just
Yeah.
to see the change in my quality of life and like where I'm at right now,
Hmm.
even though I have it sort of timed out so that it doesn't,
Right.
it probably maybe doesn't mess with my sleep a ton.
Maybe.
I will have to work my way down because just
Yeah.
going from what I'm doing to zero will be much harder than it needs to be.
Yeah. It's one of the things, like, I put people on an elimination diet a lot to help them figure out their food sensitivities. And like caffeine for a lot of people is like the one thing they're refuse to give up. And I'm like, well, that means you're addicted for one, if you refuse to give it up. And it's like, yes, you will most likely go through withdrawal, which isn't fun, but you have to kind of, yeah, taper down might be a better approach so you don't have like pounding headaches all the time. But once you like wean yourself off of it completely, just like notice like how it affects your life and how you feel, and that you might actually have more energy from not drinking caffeine potentially is what I experienced. So it's possible, but I think it's good to, it's not to say like don't ever drink caffeine ever again. I'm not saying that when I tell people to like, hey, consider like like I have patients that are doing like 10 cups a day, and I'm like, you wonder why you have sleep problems. I'm like, consider, like, I'm like, come on, maybe try it out and just see. Wouldn't that be worth it if you got like a good night's sleep, like consistently and regularly? And then, once you know what it's like to go without it for a while and you're feeling better energy wise after you've gotten over the withdrawal part, then it's like, it's your choice whether you want to fuck up your sleep or sleep better. But it's your choice, and then and that's awesome. So, yeah.
Yeah, when it's your baseline, it's just so hard to know what effect it's actually having.
Right.
Like that's what I try to do, even for the things that I feel like are potentially good for me, is to just cycle off of them every
Mhm.
once in a while, just to
Yeah.
see where they land in my life, because there's no
Right.
way to tell without sort of having a comparison to the baseline. And
Right.
for sleep, uh, there's so many things that can mess with it or
So many.
adjust it, that
Yeah.
if you're not having good quality sleep, it's definitely worth just cycling off some of the stuff, and you can come back to it later if you feel like
Yeah.
if it works for
Right.
you. But you
Yeah.
can't know that if you've been on it consistently for, I don't know, 5 years or however long.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Totally. All right. Well, I think we covered this topic pretty well. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in, and we appreciate you. And if you appreciate us, be sure to like, comment, subscribe. Tell us about your sleep and what helps you get some good night's rest. All right. We will see you next time.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please take a second to subscribe, as it really helps out a lot. If you're looking for more content, there's all sorts of information over at howtohappy.com. And if you want something a little bit more condensed and concise, I've also written the book Mindscaping, which is essentially a framework for optimizing happiness. So we'll have the link there as well. And that's all I've got. Thanks again. I'll see you next time.